So to start with, the Canadian medical residency application is divided into two streams. So we have the Canadian medical graduate, is also known as the CMG, and the International Medical Graduate, or IMG stream. The IMG stream will include all Canadian citizens who study their medical program outside of North America, and these two streams are parallel to each other during the application process, but there will be no crossover or even transfer across the two streams. So tonight, what I will focus on will be the process that will involve the international medical graduates. So an IMG, we're going to require to take three major examinations. That will be the MCEE, the MCCQE1, and the MCCQE2, which will lead you to acquire the Licentiate of Medical Council of Canada. So you could start the licensure process outside of Canada by confirming that your medical school, as well as the name of the medical degree and the year of graduation, is recognized in the International Medical Education Directory, or IMED. Once it is verified at IMED, the next step is to submit credentials for verification. Now, for first-time applicants, IMG must open a physiciansapply.ca account, and there is a one-time account fee involved with the creation of this account. Now, the Medical Council of Canada requires that IMG send a copy of their final medical diploma to the MCC Physician Credentials Repository, and once verified, eligibility to take the examination will be given. Now, an IMG, together with US osteopaths, are required to take the Medical Council Evaluating Examination, or also known as the MCEE or EE. With the new ruling of the Medical Council of Canada regarding the MCEE, international medical students or US osteopathic students in their final 20 months of their program can take the examination. So this examination, or this the MCEE, is a 4-hour computer-based examination. It is offered both in English and in French at more than 500 prometric centers in about 80 countries worldwide. MCEE is offered 5 times a year, with the next scheduled test date in September 9 to 27 and October 28 to November 8 of this year. Now, the MCEE is a general assessment of basic medical knowledge in principal discipline of medicine at the level of a new medical graduate who is about to enter its first-year residency program. If you're quite familiar with the USMLE, or the United States Medical Licensure Examination, this slide will show you a comparison between the USMLE and the MCEE. As you could see, both examinations will have a format of multiple choice questions that will test your clinical knowledge at the level of supervised medical practice. However, the MCEE will not explicitly test you on basic sciences like anatomy, biochemistry, physiology, unlike in the USMLE Step 1. What they're going to focus more will be more similar to that of the Step 2 CK of the USMLE. Now, they were not going to test you with the basic sciences because it is understood that you know about it, and it will be, in a way, incorporated in the MCE questions. So, as I said, MCE, we're going to cover the following areas like child health, maternal health, adult health, mental health, and population health and ethics. So this is quite very similar to that of the USMLE Step 2 CK. Now, the computer-based exam will going to consist of about 180 multiple choice questions with at least 5 possible answers. Most of them are all correct, but you have to choose which one is the best answer. Now, of this 180 questions, 150 are scored questions and 30 are non-scored questions. The 30 non-scored questions are used for quality assurance and for research purposes. Now, the test questions are calibrated on the ability scale, resulting in level of difficulty being assigned to each question. The result of each candidate's final scores take into account the question difficulty as well as whether or not the candidate answered the questions correctly. Do note that there is no deduction for incorrect answer. Thus, it is always best to make intellectual guess even if one is not sure of the answer. Now, because of the nature of the MCEE and the different level of difficulty for each question, the result of the exam is not given as a percentage, but rather it is reported on a standard score scale that ranges from about 50 to 500. Now, the scores are given on a scale on which the mean is approximately 271 with a standard deviation of 50. Now, the passing mark for the EE will always be 250, but the mean score is again 271. So, the MCEE scores can be interpreted in relation to the mean score. So a score of about 371, this is about 2 standard deviation from the mean, whereas a score of, let's say, 321, this is 1 standard deviation away from the mean. So you could use this, the distance from the mean in comparison with other candidates. Now, the Medical Council of Canada will then issue a statement of result for each candidate through their physicians-applied.ca account. Aside from the final results and total score, the Medical Council of Canada will also provide supplemental feedback on the candidate's performance. Now, the result is usually given 7 weeks after the last day of the examination session. An email notification will be given stating that either you pass or you fail the examination. And then a few days after, the statement of results and the supplemental feedback will be given to you via email. Please do note that the Medical Council of Canada does not limit the number of times a candidate may take the MCEE. However, candidates with passing mark cannot retake the exam to attempt to get a higher score. So unlike before, there is a validity of your MCEE. At this point, your finals, your scores, your passing mark will be your final scores for your MCEE. Now, after the MCE, the next available examination that you have to take as an international medical graduate will be the Medical Council of Canada Qualifying Examination Part 1, or also known as the MCCQE1 or QE1. The MCCQE1 or QE1 is a one-day computer-based test that will assess the competence of the candidates who obtain their medical degree for entry into supervised clinical practice in postgraduate training programs. The QE1 will going to assess your knowledge, your clinical skills, and your attitudes as outlined by the Medical Council of Canada objectives. It is usually given twice per year. One will be in spring and another session is scheduled during fall. Now, eligibility to apply for the MCCQE1 for international medical graduate is that you must successfully pass your MCEE. For international medical students or U.S. osteopath students, additional requirement to take the examination is that you must be expected to fully complete all requirements to graduate on November 30 of the same calendar year for spring session, or on March 30 of the following calendar year for fall session. Also, you must submit the student attestation form that can be downloaded from the Medical Council of Canada website. Now, application for this examination is done online at www.mcc.ca. And during the online process, you must select up to 3 examination centers in the order of your preference. Once MCC has assigned centers to all accepted candidates, they will send a communication to confirm the center assignments information online, and approximately about 2 weeks following the designated scheduling period, entrance card package will be available to print. Now, the QE1 is divided into 2 components, which is what makes it quite different from the evaluating exam. The first component is composed of multiple choice question that is given in the morning. There are about 196 multiple choice questions that should be completed in about 3.5 hours. The 196 multiple choice questions are divided into 7 sections, and each section will contain about 28 questions. You do not have time limit for each section, but rather the whole 7 section has a time limit of 3.5 hours. It is recommended that you should spend less than 30 minutes per section, or about 1.5 minutes per question. Now, the MCCQE Part 1 is a computer-adopted test. That is, a candidate who performed very well in a given discipline are presented slightly more difficult question for that discipline in the next section, whereas candidates who score poorly or answer incorrectly within a section in a given discipline are given slightly less difficult question in the next section. Now, some tests are given pictorial materials presented in the form of photographs, diagram, x-ray, electrocardiograms, and graphical and tabulated materials. Now, once candidate submitted an answer to a particular section, he or she will not be allowed to return to that section. Now, the second component of the MCCQE1 will be the clinical decision making that is usually given in the afternoon. Usually, candidate is given up to 40 to 60 cases for a maximum total of about 80 questions, with 1 to 5 questions per case. The maximum allotted time to finish the afternoon session is 4 hours. Unlike the morning session, the clinical decision making is not computer adopted test. Now, the QE1 is designed to assess problem solving and clinical decision skills, wherein candidates will be presented with case description followed by test questions that assess key issues in the resolution of the case. So you are assessed on the knowledge of your internal medicine, surgery, pediatrics, OB, psychiatry, and population health. Now, QE1 will have more Canadian legal issues than that of the medical council evaluating exam. One may be asked to come up also with clinical information. You may also be asked of diagnostic procedure, make diagnostic, and even prescribe management. Again, the MCC QE1 is quite different from that of the EE because the QE1 will have more Canadian legal issues. Now, the total score is calculated in the MCC QE1 by combining the multiple choice questions and the clinical decision making components. The MCQ components accounts for about 75% of the score, and the remaining 25% will be allotted for the CDM or the clinical decision making. The QE1 results are reported on a standard score scale that ranges from 50 to about 950. Now, the pass mark is set at 390. However, the mean score will going to vary from one administration to another, although the standard deviation is always set at 100. So The mean scores for this one, usually for the last time, I think the mean score will be about 490. So if you will be one standard deviation, you should get about 590. That will be a good score. Now, similar to MCE, MCCQE1 does not limit the number of times a candidate may attempt. However, candidates who have passed results cannot retake the examination in attempt to obtain a higher score. Now, the next examination that you have to take, which we're going to assess the competence of IMG regarding the skills, your attitudes essential for independent clinical practice in Canada, will be the Medical Council of Canada Qualifying Examination Part 2, or also known as MCCQE2. Now, the MCCQE2 is a 3-hour objective structured clinical examination that will consist of series of 5 and 10-minute clinical stations. This will be very similar to that of the USMLE Step 2 CS. Now, each station will be either a 5-minute or a 10-minute clinical station, and you are going to have a brief written clinical problem, and then candidates will have interaction with a standardized patient to examine or sometimes obtain focus history or assess and address the patient's issues. Now, also, candidate may be asked to answer specific questions related to the patient, make a diagnosis, write admission orders, or sometimes interpret x-rays. You will be tested on the following disciplines, similar to that of the E and the QE1. And the scoring for MCC QE2 will be given in the standard scores from 50 to 950. Now, in the 5-minute couplet clinical station, either you're going to have a clinical encounter with a standardized patient, wherein you're going to have getting history from your patient, or you might going to have a focused physical examination with your patient. Or the 5-minute couplet, we're going to have a written examination wherein you're going to interpret some x-ray films, or probably going to make a differential diagnosis. Whereas in the 10-minute couplet, or the 10-minute clinical encounter with your standardized patient, 9 minutes will be allotted mostly to your standardized patient, and a minute will be given for oral examination. So an examiner will going to ask about 1 or about 2 to 3 questions that will be related to the patient's problem. Again, the scores will be on the standard score scales of about 50 to 950, and the scores are awarded on the basis of performance at each station. Now, the cut points to pass the examination varies every year and every examination, but it is best to acquire at least 64% pass mark in each station. Now, to apply for the MCCQE2, you are required to successfully pass MCCQE1, and also your medical degree should be successfully source verified by precisionapply.ca, and you must successfully finish a minimum of 12 months postgraduate clinical medical training. And similar to MCCQE1 application, you are requested to choose 3 centers. Centers are either designated as English Center or a French Center. Now, MCCQE2 is also given twice a year. One will be in spring and another session will be in fall. The next available session for QE2 will be on October 26 and 27. And the next tentative schedule will be on May 3 and May 4, 2014. So those 3 examinations are the 3 exams that you have to take as an international medical graduate to practice here in Canada. Again, to apply for the Canadian Medical Licensure Examination, the first step that you have to go to do will be to apply at physiciansapply.ca. You have to submit all your credentials for verification. Usually, physiciansapply.ca will going to use the ECFMG verification source. So if you have an ECFMG account, your verification will be much more faster. Now, the first time applicants, you are required to pay 250 Canadian dollars to open an account. Now, additional fee of $140 will be asked for additional medical credential documents that will be submitted. Now, as for the MCCE examination, the following are the fees, currently the fees for the MCEE and the qualifying exam part 1 and part 2. As you could see, the MCEE will cost about $1,645, whereas QE1 will be about $920, and QE2 will be $2,190. Now, these are the scheduled dates that currently available for the MCE. The one that is available at this time will be September 9 to 27 and October 28 to November 8. Usually it has the same months every year, so the next available one for 2014 will be sometime in January, and then March and May. Now, always do remember that the MCE is the only examination that you have to take outside of Canada. The rest of the examination you have to take here in Canada. Now, for the MCCE QE1, the next available date will be October 28 to November 8, and the following centers are available from coast to coast. Now, the next available session for next year is not yet posted, but more likely it will be sometime in May. As for the QE2, the next available date will be October 26 to 27, and this is offered in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Victoria, Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal has 2 centers. It has an English center and a French center, and also Quebec. Quebec will be more of the French center, and also Saskatoon will we're going to offer an English center exam. Now, once you passed all your examination, your EE, your QE1, your QE2, the next step will be to apply for the residency matching system at the CARMS, or Canadian Resident Matching Services. Now, as an IMG, you have to acquire or get approval for the basic criteria and the provincial criteria. Now, for the basic criteria, you are required to have or pass your MCEE, and also you have to take your English language proficiency test. So either you could take your TOEFL IBT or you could take your IELTS. If you're going to take TOEFL IBT, the passing mark will be about 96 with 24 for each stage, for each component, whereas for IELTS, you should get about 7 bun for all components. Now, the only difference now will be the provincial criteria for the residency matching. Canada has 10 provinces, and each province in Canada has different criteria for the CARMS. So what I'm going to focus for tonight will be for the British Columbia. Now, if you're planning to apply for residency as an IMG in British Columbia, the first thing that you have to do will be to apply for the UBC IMGBC program. For you to apply for that, again, the requirement will be the Medical Council Evaluating Examination. That means you have to pass that, and then also you have to submit your English language proficiency test, and you have to show a proof that you stay in British Columbia for a minimum of 1 year. Once you have all those criteria, then you have to submit your application at UBC IMGBC program, and you have to pay about $150 for the application fee. Now, UBC IMG program has two intake. One will be in January 1st application, and the other one will be July 1st application. If you are qualified for those intake, you will usually get a notification that you will be required to take the BC National Assessment Examination, or the OSCE, the BC NAC, wherein you're going to take the examination sometime in March for the first intake or September on the second intake. The BC NAC OSCE will be very similar to that of the MCC QE2. Now, with the new ruling with the British Columbia, it is now required for all IMG that you have to pass and take and pass your BC NAC OSCE to participate in any application for the CARMS in British Columbia. Before, you have to take, to be included for the first iteration, you have to take the BC NAC OSCE, but you could apply for the second iteration. But with the new ruling of the British Columbia, for you to be qualified for the first iteration and the second iteration, you have to take the BC NAC OSCE. Now, the top 30, usually the top 30 of the BC NAC OSCE, will going to get a clinical assessment at St. Paul here in Vancouver for the 8-week rotation, and this will going to, the evaluation will go directly to CARMS. Now, for the CARMS, registration usually open sometime in August. So once there is a registration, then you're going to require to have your token, and this token will be going to they're going to send to you via email, and the CARMS will now going to ask you to submit all your application as well as your documents for the residency program. Sometime in September, they're going to now post the available position available for the match, and also by September you have to at least now browse which programs do you want to take for the match. Now, the CARMS application is a bilingual application, so you could choose either English or French, or you could use both language in your application for the CARMS. Now, the supporting documents, if applicable, by the required programs that you're applying for, should be submitted before October or sometimes in November. And then also for the program availability, you are required to choose 4 programs for the first iteration, and the second iteration programs can be selected once the result for the first iteration have been announced. You then have to complete all the necessary documents needed for the program you applied for, and you have to check your account at CARMS Online, your My Application account, where you're going to see all the documents that will be needed to be submitted. Now, the national interview period will going to start sometime in January to February. However, for international medical graduates, there is no national interview period per se. The national interview period is usually given for Canadian medical students. So probably interview will going to start even in December for IMG. Now, ranking access usually starts on the last week of January, and the deadline will be for mid-February. And then the match day is usually given in March, and then the start of the new residency will be in July. So I guess that will overview of the Canadian application process. So we have here a question: can you clarify the difference between the QE2 and the OSCE? Now, the QE2, and again, it has 5 to 10. The difference between the two are really not that big. It's just that the OSCE will have about 10 station to 12 station. Unlike in the QE2, you have 5-minute station and a 10-minute station. Also in the in the OSCE, examination will be either going to ask they're going to ask you to take a physical examination, or either they're going to ask you to take a diagnosis with your patient. Also, the QE2 will be a requirement for you to get your license to practice in Canada, whereas the OSCE is usually a requirement for you to get into the residency program.